Thank you very much indeed for attending, and you're very, very welcome to the 15th Research Conference of the National Council for Special Education. I'd like to welcome you all very much indeed, and a very special welcome to our Minister for Special Education and Inclusion, Josepha Madigan TD, who's going to address us shortly, and I think it's a measure of her support for the sector that she's here with us this morning again, and she was here last year as well, so sincere thanks to her. My name is Fergal Lynch, and I'm a recently appointed Chair of the National Council for Special Education, which is a huge privilege and honour. I'll say a little bit about myself in a moment, but just if you'll indulge me, a couple of short housekeeping issues. Please note the emergency exits. The ladies and the gents are to the left and to the right of you. Phones, please keep them off or else on silent if you're doing social media. We would encourage you to keep to the scheduled breaks. We have, you'll see, built in a good amount of time for networking and talking among yourselves and meeting each other, but we have a very interesting and hopefully vibrant and interesting programme, so we'll try and keep to schedule. On your way in, you'll have seen the very interesting information stands, which are manned by the NCSE staff, who will be more than happy to talk to you about the supports and services they offer, and you can see the publications that they have as well, and they're available to answer your questions. And lastly, on the housekeeping side, please spread the word. Please, if you're tweeting, the hashtag is NCSEConf2023. And hopefully we'll get a good deal of publicity and exposure in relation to this. So given it's my first year as Chair of the National Council for Special Education, I just thought I'd say something very brief about myself for those of you who don't know me. Essentially, I'm a career public servant for the last 40 years or so. I worked in the Department of Health for many, many years, and more recently I was Secretary General of the Department of Children, Equality, Disability, Integration and Youth. I did 7 years there, and more recently currently I'm working in the University of Galway, where I'm promoting some collaboration between researchers and policymakers in relation to the development of policy-making issues. I think it's highly relevant to what we're talking about this morning in terms of research and connecting research to policy-making, making sure that we make good decisions and good policies. I've personally had a significant interest in disability issues for many years. Interestingly, my very first assignment as a young fellow in the Department of Health many years ago was to rehabilitation and income maintenance issues for people with a disability. And I maintained that significant interest in disability services for many years thereafter. Later on, then, I was involved in the Disability Act and commencement of that, working with the HSE and then working with the Department of Education on EPSIN. Later again, when I was in the Department of Children, I was involved in things like transitions for young people to adult services, so working with TUSLA, with the HSE, Ombudsman for Children and so on. And then, interestingly, one of my very last tasks in the Department of Children was to start the process of transferring services, policy on services for community-related disability services from the Department of Health to the Department of Children, which was completed recently. So my own background, I hope, is of one where I have a significant interest in the disability area, and I'm learning all the time. I've had a number of meetings now with people in the sector, and I'm hoping to meet many more people, including today, having an opportunity to meet a number of you during the breaks and to have a chat with you. I've spoken to everybody on the Council individually, and it underlines just the extent to which the Council is utterly committed and interested in this area, and I think there's huge talent involved. Equally, I think in the NCSE itself, its staff, a hugely committed and energetic staff, including the CEO, John Carney, who you'll hear from shortly. And sincere thanks to him and his staff for all they do. And John has a lot to tell us about later in terms of the development of the NCSE and how it's going to go forward. If you'll permit me, I'm going to thank particularly Jennifer Doran and Caroline McKeown for organising the conference and their team. As you know, something of this kind takes a good deal of work to put together, and I'm very, very grateful. The whole thing works like clockwork. They've put a lot of thought and energy into it, and I'm going to thank in advance all the speakers that you're going to hear this morning as well, and the chairs. There's a lot of work goes into this. I'm also going to thank Pat Goff, who acted as chair before I was appointed, and I'd like to thank my predecessor, Joe Hayes, who served the Council with distinction both as chair and earlier as an ordinary member of the Council. He would have addressed you this time last year. In terms of the NCSE itself, I think this is a huge opportunity for us for changes and for service developments. Thanks to the Minister and the Government, we have a significant increase in budget, a 13 million increase in budget over a 2-year period, which enables us to do the sort of things that we want to do for children, for young adults, for teachers, for schools, for the whole system. And we have the opportunity to do that now in a way that we couldn't probably have done to the same extent in the past. John is going to tell us about the organisational changes that involves, about the staff recruitment, and really about the vision for the future. And it's a very exciting vision. But it also means, given that we have this additional money, thanks to the Minister, it puts a challenge to us as the Council now and to the NCSE to deliver, and we're under no illusions whatever. That challenge is a big one, but it's one we're determined to achieve, and it's something we'll be talking about over the next while. Just a word about today's conference and how it's going to run. I think it's a very nice mix of looking back to start off with on the special education sector, then looking at present issues and looking to future plans. This morning we're going to be talking about the NCSE and inclusive service provision. In the afternoon we're talking about universal design for learning. And I think all the presentations and abstracts will be on the website later today, and there will be video recordings in the next few days as well, so you'll be able to look back on that. You have the programme, so I won't go into any detail, but just very briefly, Peter Archer, who chairs the research committee, is going to chair the first session this morning. I'd be delighted to welcome Professor Emer Ring from Mary Immaculate College, who was commissioned by the Council to chart the developments in special education over the last number of decades. You'll have heard an initial outline last year of her work, and you're hearing the full version this morning, which will be very interesting to hear. Then we've Professor Debs Robinson from the University of Derby and Dr. Leisha O'Sullivan from Mary Immaculate College, who were commissioned to evaluate the NCSE's frontline services, and they have a very interesting presentation for you to give you an indication of what the feedback is like. And I think it's really, really important for us as an organisation to commission this sort of work, to ask questions about what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong, what is the feedback from the people who are actually using the services. John, as I said, will then give us an important outline of where the NCSE is going, the vision for it, the expansion of services, and what we're doing to make all of that happen, including the organisational structural change, the development of the service, and how it's all going to knit together, which is, as I say, a very challenging and interesting component of our work. And then in the afternoon, I think the UDL part, I think always our conversations about inclusion are regularly synonymous with UDL, and we're going to hear why this afternoon. We're delighted to welcome Lindsay Jones, who's the CEO of CAST. And CAST is the leading educational development and research organisation that created the UDL learning framework and guidelines. And it'll be fascinating to hear her insights into the way we think about learner variability and what helps us design more engaging, efficient and equitable systems. It's always very valuable as well to hear local practical experience. And we're going to hear from Billy Redmond and Fiona Keelty, who are Principal and Deputy Principal respectively of the North Wicklow Education Secondary School. And we're going to hear their insights and experience into introducing and embedding UDL in the Irish post-primary sector. Finally, then, we're going to have a panel involving Fiona Burns, Marion Wilkinson, Kathy Goss and Sharon Healy, who are going to give us insights into learning within the Irish education system, and their respective responsibilities are mentioned there in the programme. So I think we have a very interesting and important, I hope stimulating programme that you will find of value throughout the day. We're delighted that you can be here. And a particular welcome now to Minister Madigan. A thank you to her for her continuing support for special education and inclusion, including, as I say, the budgetary support that we now have. And it's a great pleasure to introduce Minister Madigan and to invite her to address the conference. Minister, thank you very much.